He has heard of Ways Pharmaceuticals. Although this company is not among the top 500 in the country, it is at least a large company with a market value of several billion. Is Charlie going to acquire 80% of the company's shares? So he asked Charlie, "Mr. Wade, what is the purchase price of your 80% shares?" Charlie said indifferently, "I don't need to spend money to acquire 80% of the shares, but I want to provide them with prescriptions." "Ah. Doesn't it cost a penny, just make prescriptions?" Paul felt unbelievable. After all, it is a billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. Charlie doesn't give people a penny, and takes away 80% of others' shares based on prescriptions. This is too awesome. What kind of prescription is needed to be so valuable? Yes. Charlie nodded and said, "Trust me, my prescription is more valuable than their pharmaceutical factory." Paul looked at Charlie in shock. Although it felt unbelievable, he didn't feel that Charlie was bragging. So he hurriedly started the car and drove to Ways Pharmaceutical. Ways Pharmaceuticals has a production base in the southeast of Orus Hill. In addition to all the medicines produced here, their management also works here. In Ways' own production base, there are workshops, warehouses, office buildings and dormitories. As soon as Paul parked the car in front of the Ways Pharmaceutical office building, Liang was already waiting here. Charlie was in Changbai Mountain that day and gave Liang a huge shock. So that Liang already regarded Charlie as the god he believed in this life, and had a strong urge to go through water and fire in his heart. Respectfully welcomed Charlie and Paul to his office. Liang immediately took out the contract template he had drawn up and said to Charlie, "Mr. Wade, I already have drawn up the contract. You can ask your lawyer to go over it and see if there are any problems." Speaking of this, he opened a contract and introduced, "The main clause in this contract is that on behalf of the Wade Group, I will unconditionally transfer 80% of the shares to you." Charlie didn't expect Liang to be so simple. So he nodded and said, "Let Paul go with your lawyer about the contract." Liang hurriedly said, "Then I will let the lawyer in now." Then he made a call and several lawyers from the pharmaceutical factory walked in. Paul worked very professionally and immediately confronted them with the details of the contract. The contract was drawn up quickly and Charlie and Liang signed the contract together. After signing, Charlie has become the largest shareholder of Ways Pharmaceuticals, owning 80% of Ways Pharmaceuticals. Because Charlie has hired Paul as his lawyer, Paul's name is also written in the lawyer column in this corporate equity transfer contract. However, Charlie was a little surprised that what Paul left on the contract turned out to be his Chinese name. And his Chinese name is actually Han Mukin. This surprised him too much. Paul's Chinese name followed his mother Meiqing's last name, which did not surprise him. To his surprise, the last two words of the name, Mu-kun. The word admiration alone seems to have nothing to do with feelings. But in ancient Chinese, the word mu has a very deep meaning. It is the original meaning of attachment, yearning, longing, and also pointing to admiration. And let alone the word kun, it must be Jacob, his father-in-law. In this way, Paul's Chinese name probably means, Meiqing is attached to Jacob, Meiqing yearns for Jacob, Meiqing misses Jacob, and even Meiqing loves Jacob deeply. He felt that the name reflected Meiqing's full and deep affection, and at the same time he felt that the name highlighted Meiqing's full literary accomplishments. If she was not into the language, then she would give Paul a Chinese name, probably Han Sikin, Han Miankin, and Han Ikin. However, she just used a low-key and deep, and even a long-standing Han Mukin. At this moment, even Charlie felt that Meiqing was really amazing. But all this was just what Charlie thought in his own heart, and he didn't tell Paul about it. But he guessed that a smart person like Paul should also know what his own Chinese name means. Here, Liang respectfully asked him after signing, "Mr. Wade, is Ways Pharma going to change its name now?" He felt that Charlie is already a major shareholder of Ways Pharmaceuticals, and it seems inappropriate to continue to call Ways Pharmaceuticals. Charlie also thinks that the company he controls is called Ways Pharmaceutical, which is really strange. So he thought for a while, and said, "Then let's change the name to JX Pharmaceutical, JX short for Juzon." Charlie felt that his ability to master so many classic medical techniques left behind by his ancestors was entirely the result of the 9 profound heavenly scriptures, so he simply named JX Pharmaceutical, which can be regarded as his own contribution to the 9 profound heavenly scriptures. Although Liang didn't know what the word Juzon meant, but since Mr. Wade had already said so, he naturally wouldn't have any opinions, so he immediately said, "Mr. Wade, then I will submit a statement today and register at the same time. The trademark of JX Pharmaceutical." Charlie nodded and said, "You told me that Kobayashi Pharmaceutical's stomach powder was very suppressing you, didn't it?" "Yes." Liang sighed and said, "Kobayashi Wizen is now sold throughout Asia. The pressure on us is very high." Charlie said to Liang, "Kobayashi Pharmaceutical is nothing. I'll give you a prescription for treating stomach problems. After you produce it, you will call it Ju Wizen. Did you bring paper and pen? I will write it for you. After you go back, you will produce a prescription according to this formula and put it on the market as soon as possible." Liang was overjoyed, but he didn't expect Charlie to draw up a prescription himself, quickly took out a pen and paper, and handed it respectfully. Charlie thought for a moment, and selected a pill formula from the 9 Profound Heaven Classics. He chose this because the medicinal materials used in this formula are relatively easy to find. Although this is only the primary prescription for stomach problems in the 9 Profound Heavenly Secrets, this medicine has miraculous effects on ordinary people.